Hello viewers, welcome back to the channel. Now, have you ever wondered if you're riding the right size bike? Because choosing the right size bike shouldn't be difficult, but it can be easy to feel overwhelmed or even afraid of getting it wrong. And I get questions from lots of you watching all the time about bike fit, so I know it's a big topic. And today, in this video, we're going to cut through all the confusion once and for all. Because I'm joined by a professional bike fit expert, Lee Prescott, who runs his own bike fit studio and bike brand with decades of experience, and he is president of the IBF. So he knows his onions when it comes to bike fit. Now, since choosing the right size bike is ultimately all about comfort, another way to maximize the comfort on a bike is with my go-to chamois cream, chamois butter, the sponsor of today's video. I rarely head out for a bike ride without first applying some chamois cream, especially on long distance rides. And when I go bike packing, which I love doing, I pack a few of these in my bag. They're fantastic for multi-day rides and they've definitely saved my arse more than a few times. So Chamois Butter is a family-owned company based in the US for over 30 years, and now they're expanding into the UK and European markets. Available now through the company's own website or via Amazon, and now many bike shops stock it as well. And for all you lucky viewers in the US, here's a nice 20% discount when you buy through the website at the link down below. So a big thank you to Chamois Butter for sponsoring today's video. Now let's dive in and sort out your bike size once and for all.
Now, the key thing here is, and if you ask any good bike fitter, they're always going to tell you, fit first, buy later. The reason behind that is, ultimately, once you've got your bike, we're going to fit you to that and fine tune it. But if you're not on the right bike in the first place, no amount of fine tuning is going to make it perfect for you, okay? So a small investment up front in seeing a good bike fitter that can do a bike sizing is going to save you immeasurable amounts of money when you then go to buy a bike. And it means that you can go and buy a bike with confidence, okay? Especially if you're buying a bike that's got integrated cockpits or specific proprietary seat posts. Those things need to be spec'd at point of purchase. If you buy a bike off the shelf and those contact points are wrong for your kind of anthropomorphic body proportions, it's going to cost you a lot of money to get it changed. You know, cockpits can be upwards of £600. New seat posts for carbon integrated aero bikes can be £300-400. So spending, £100 or £200 on getting a sizing with a fitter first is going to save you all of that problems. What we typically do in a sizing is we'd put you onto some form of adjustable jig. Here's my old trusty jig, which I've had for 20 odd years. And what this allows fitters to do is move you around and position you regardless of what's underneath. Okay, what we're really interested in is getting your contact points all in the right place. So that's where your feet, pelvis and hands are in the optimum position for the style of riding you're looking to purchase. One piece of advice I would give anybody is don't rely on manufacturers' recommendations for bike sizing. Okay, they are based on perfect models of perfectly proportioned people of a certain height. Okay, they do not take into account the functionality of the person, the flexibility and the proportionality. Very few of us fit within the perfect category. So a manufacturer recommendation is normally going to be based on a few key measurements like height, inseam, those sorts of things. Not only have we seen a few of the algorithms on some manufacturers' websites just being wrong and faulty and pumping out recommendations that are just clearly false, but they don't take account of the person. So please don't take any notice of manufacturer's recommendation. You'll always end up, well, not always, but we see very often people coming in saying, oh, I'm X tall, the guide on the website told me to buy this and now I can't fit it. Go and see a good local fitter first. If you don't know where you can find one, ask someone in your local club who they use. you could go to the IBFI website and do a search there for a good certified local fitter, but just go and get sized first properly. It will save you a fortune in the long run. One of the key questions people ask is, what size frame should I buy? And lots of people are stuck with the mentality of looking at frame size based on what a manufacturer specs. Now, if you're looking at a 54, 56, medium, small, what most manufacturers are meaning by that is seat tube height. There's a few fundamental flaws in using that as a way to specify the size of a bike these days. You know, ever since Mike Burrows created the sloping top tube TCR for Giant, that as a method for working out frame size has gone out the window. Okay, historically, if you said it's a 52, that was a useful measurement because typically the top tube would also be a 52. So that gave you an idea of stack and reach. What we've had to do now is move that dimension to the one common thing which all manufacturers agree on, which is where the top of the head tube is in comparison to the bottom bracket. And that now gives you the stack and reach of a bike. The reach and the stack from the bottom bracket to the top of the head tube is a common dimension across all manufacturers. So it's the one thing which they don't all measure in a different way. Seat tube length is irrelevant. There are probably about 10 different ways to measure a seat tube length. You know, you can go centre top, centre centre, centre to horizontal, centre to virtual horizontal, top to top. You know, there's so many different ways to do it, and they all do it in different ways depending on what factory they're using in China or Vietnam. So ignore that as a dimension, and if you're comparing frames to see how they might fit you, stack and reach is the only real dimension to look at. Okay. Once you've found a bike that fits within the kind of stack and reach range that might work for you, then you need to consider what the seat tube is, because you need to consider standover height. There's no point getting a bike where the bars can be in the right place, but when you come off the saddle, you can't physically touch the floor, okay? And that's something we'll cover a bit later in the video. So one of the key things to consider when you're looking at the stack and reach of a frame is how that's going to work for you. Okay, if you've been for a bike sizing at a fitter and they've given you a potential stack and reach range that will work for you, interpreting that is important. So if you've got a reach, here we've got 408, your contact point to the centre of the stem is obviously going to be dependent upon the length of the stem and the amount of spaces under it. So you can alter that contact position by stem length and spacer stack. So if you've got a stack that is maybe slightly shorter than you need it, you can potentially still use it by putting more spacers in, which is what we're seeing a lot at the moment on kind of a lot of modern race bikes, because they tend to be quite long and low. However, be careful here, because stem length as a proportion of the total length of the bike is important. You don't want a big bike with a really small stem or vice versa, because that really adversely affects your steering geometry. Most bikes are designed in a specific size to work best with a specific small range of stems, and it's normally only between 1 or 2 sizes above what comes as standard on the bike. A key consideration when you're buying a bike is your body proportions. Now, good bike designers will often use data like this, anthropomorphic data sheets, to design their bike ranges. A really well-designed range should work whereby if you're in the middle of a size range of a particular frame, you should also actually be able to fit on the frame smaller and larger than that at the opposite ends of their size range. So ideally, good, well-designed bike ranges have about a 50% overlap of sizing. They're not all like that, unfortunately. So what to do if you are short torso, long legs like me, or if you've got a long torso and short legs like David? That's going to mean that you're going to fit on bikes slightly differently. So for me, with a shorter torso and a longer leg, I need a bike that is shorter. So I would probably tend to go with a smaller frame and just have more seat post visible. That does mean that I potentially need to then also have slightly more stack here, but that's what I need to do to get fitted on regular bikes. For David, with a longer torso and a shorter leg, he's probably going to need to go the opposite and go for a longer frame size, and that would normally mean he's going to have less seat post visible. Okay, again, something that your good local certified fitter will be able to advise you on. It's just an absolute no-brainer.
Inseam, is that important as a metric for bike fit?
Again, obviously it's a metric that will have an influence, but it's not the way to choose a bike. You know, if we're doing a fit on somebody, you know, there were these old, the old Le Mans method, Conconi, all these other sort of things that you used to be able to do by taking inseam and dividing it by 0.85, you know. It might get you somewhere close, but it's not going to take account of all the other things we've just mentioned, right? So, you know, a fitter is going to fit you properly on a bike. And you know, don't think that I'm saying this because I want to earn more money from doing that. I earn way more money from people that come in who have bought the wrong bike than the ones that have bought the right bike. Okay, so you know, I'm doing myself out of work. Please buy the right size bike by getting a fit first. That way, you know, you won't have to spend as much money regularly seeing your local fitter for your little top-ups. You know, as opposed to get the wrong size bike. Not only is it going to be expensive, but it is going to be, you know, potentially cause you repetitive injuries, will hamper performance. All the reasons you've bought that bike will be slightly diluted. So, you know, just go and see a fitter, buy the right bike in the first place, have fun on your bike. If you have, from your fitter, some good like stack and reach recommendations or sizing that they've given to you, no doubt you'll be going through the websites looking at the geometry charts. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that stack and reach on most, especially carbon frames, isn't linear if you chart it on a graph, okay? And that's because of the way that carbon frames are made typically. If they're coming out of a mould, that company hasn't got one mould specific to each frame size, okay? They're using various different mould to create different parts of the frame, and they're mix and matching those to create the different frame sizes. So what you'll often see, you know, if you graphed stack and reach, it wouldn't be a straight line. It would almost kind of jump up and then jump up and jump up. And that's because often you'll see this kind of very small amount of reach adjustment but a big jump in the stack, and then vice versa, and it will work its way like that through the range. And that's where essentially they're just optimizing the usage of the molds. It's important to know that, because now when you're looking at those geometry charts, if you fall just outside of that kind of jump, then that's going to mean you probably need to look at an alternative brand or alternative bike within that company's range. If you've done all of your searching and you are maybe a slightly non-average proportion, or shorter than average or much taller than average, the amount of bikes available to you are very limited. So if you can't find a bike that suits you, what do you do? Luckily, there are options. Most good bike fitters will typically also work with some good custom frame builders. Okay, we're lucky here in that we also make our own frames and work with some of the best custom frames in the world. But if you don't fit on production bikes, custom frames is probably the way you're going to want to go. And don't despair, they don't have to be massively expensive. We quite often find that a custom bike can be cheaper than an off-the-peg one, because you're not having to modify it once you've bought it to fit you properly. It fits you straight out of the box, and there's no extra modifications required. Also, with a custom build, it also means you can spend the money where you need it. So forget about the fancy new group set that weighs 50 grams less, but actually functions exactly the same as the group set 3 tiers below. Spend the money on your bearings, your wheels, the things that actually you don't want to have to keep changing. group sets these days we would consider almost as a consumable. Yeah, but if you spend the money on a good headset, a good bottom bracket, and a really good set of wheels, as well as a well-designed and built frame, those bits should last you basically forever. We've built complete custom bikes for as little as 4,000, and that's, you know, often a problem solver at that range. It's someone who wants a bike that they physically just can't get onto another frame. You know, we did a bike sizing yesterday for a chap who is below average height, but also is proportionally isn't kind of normal, but loves to ride his bike. And we're going to build him a nice custom titanium frame through one of our partners, and we'll get him riding really nicely. And that bike won't cost him more than an S-Works tarmac.
What percentage of people sort of need a bespoke frame, would you say?
In terms of need one rather than want one, it's not a huge proportion. You know, most people can get onto a production frame of some description, albeit it's always going to be a bit of a compromise. You know, there might always have to be a big spacer stack or a shorter than optimum stem, or, you know, so whenever you're dealing with a production frame, unless you are the exact size and proportion as the model that the designer has used to design that frame, there's going to be a compromise. Whereas with a custom bike, there is no compromise. That bike is designed specifically for you and your proportions, your level of flexibility, your functionality, your riding style, and all of those other good things. So, you know, especially if you think about kind of cost per ride, custom frame's always going to be cheaper, basically. You've only got to look at the pros, right? They're often riding bikes which are not what the manufacturer would recommend for them based on their height. You know, because they have specific requirements, they have a specific amount of functionality that, you know, most normal human beings don't have, but they have like specificity. You need to size and design and build the bike specific to that, not your overall height. You know, your overall height's irrelevant because there's so many other factors that are involved in getting you comfortable and functional and performance orientated on a bike. So yeah, just go and see a fitter before you buy your bike.